One time I asked my flute professor, I asked her, how many days off can I take? Because Christmas and my birthday are around the same time. So I was trying to get some time off. And she said, you can take 3 days off a month. And so I was like, all right, Christmas and my birthday. Well, I took more than 3 days off and I was terrified because she said if I took off more days than that, it would go, like it would leave. Surprise! I haven't played the flute more than a couple days a month now for years, and I still have it. Because once you've practiced long enough, it stays with you. It does. Your motor skills retain, especially since I've been playing since I was 11. So, yeah, whatever. Don't believe everything your professor says. I'm here to talk about why I left classical music. And it's not an easy thing to talk about because it's surrounded by trauma. And I started playing the flute when I was 11 years old. I got a flute for my 11th birthday. Before that, I was playing piano, I was singing, I took a lot of music lessons, but I started with my Polish flute teacher when I was 11. And when I went to college for classical music flute performance, I started playing from 3 to 6 hours every day, and that didn't include orchestra and band rehearsals. Then when I went to grad school, I got a full stipend. I got a teaching stipend, so I taught college students the flute, and I also played professionally. And after grad school, I taught the flute in Texas for 4 or 5 years, in Houston and Dallas, Waco. I had 40 to 60 students a week. I was teaching master classes. I was performing. I also got to judge some competitions. When the pandemic hit, I lost all of my students. I had no income, and I immediately got referred into mortgage finance. And I've been working in the finance industry now for several years. There are several reasons why the classical music industry is toxic. But here are some reasons why I left classical music and I'm not going back. 1, people are so competitive, and we're taught to be competitive. When I was in undergrad, my flute teacher told me to Photoshop the birthmark out of my poster. This birthmark, the one on my neck. And I think that gives a really good idea of just how perfectionistic we are taught to be in classical music. And it's not realistic. We're also taught that if we audition enough, if we practice enough, eventually we will make it. The truth is that the level that I was playing at by the end of my graduate degree was just as proficient and high quality as any other graduate flutist. But the reason that I wasn't winning is because there is not the need for that many classical flutists in orchestras. And orchestras are dying and going on strike as we speak. The lie that is fed to us in classical music school that we have to be a certain level of perfect in order to move forward, it's just not true. What is perfection in classical music? I like to think of music as having soul. I grew up and I fell into music because I loved it for the passion that it had, for how much emotion you could add to something. But when we go to classical music school, it teaches you that the notes are what matter. But music as a career means playing the notes for someone else. Not to mention playing the same pieces over and over and over again. And I can't tell you how tired I've gotten of Mozart in G, or Mozart in D, or Beethoven's Fourth, or Beethoven's Ninth. Pieces that are played over and over again in slightly different ways, With live recordings now, you can hear these symphonies in hundreds of different styles and methods and ways, and it's not going to make a difference if you play the same piece again for someone else. 2. Classical music is toxic because the industry is based on obsessing over your teachers. When I was an undergrad, my best friend was abused by her professor. And everybody we know could see that they were close. However, because it was the music industry, we thought obsessing over a professor is healthy. Mentorship is healthy because when you are a musician, you need something to aspire to. We idolize musicians for their status, for the fact that they're playing in the Berlin Phil, or the fact that they are a traveling, worldwide touring musician. This is an unhealthy way to consider any kind of musician. It makes us feel inferior, and it takes away our own humanity. Now, I am a DJ. I teach a few flute lessons a week. I still work and make money in the financial industry. And I have found more fulfillment and satisfaction in DJing and playing a few flute lessons a week than I did in my 15 plus years as a classical musician. The reason is because there's no one telling me what's right or wrong. There is no one to idolize, because once you get to the top, everybody is the same. For some people, they've made classical music work. I have a friend, he is now a conductor of a youth symphony, and he has never strayed from his path, and he is joyful and he loves it, and he doesn't absorb the terrible things that professors and colleagues have said to him. I was not that resilient. I'm a people pleaser, and I took in all of the criticism that people told me, and I stopped playing. I couldn't pick up my instrument without crying, because every time I did, I criticized every part of myself. I criticized my sound. I hated the sound of the flute. I hated saying that I was a musician. I was embarrassed to be in the industry. Number 3. Classical music isn't sustainable unless you sell your soul. When I was teaching in Texas, I was making good income. However, some students would show up and they wouldn't pay me. Some parents would say they would pay me and never would, and I wouldn't hear from them again. Some school booster programs would pay me 3 or 4 months late. I cannot emphasize how many times I have played Handel's Messiah, Easter gigs, Christmas Eve gigs, really bad renditions of Boston Pops tunes. These things we play over and over and over again. And after a while, how can you feel like you are not a sellout? You tell me. I couldn't do it. And I don't think I could do it for more than 5 years professionally. I am decidedly pursuing music in private now because I want it to mean something to me, and I don't want to care if it's good or bad, because it's not. What do you think?